Welcome everybody to this edition of Portsmouth This Week. I'm your temporary host, Bob Poniatowski, sitting in for Doug Smith. And we're very happy today to welcome to our studios members of the Portsmouth Prevention Coalition, PPC as they call it. And with us far from me at the end is Maryanne Raymo. She is the chair of this organization. And in the middle is Jelley, Jilley, in case you're keeping track, and Cory SIlvia. Next to me is the head honcho. He's the coordinator of the whole program. Well, welcome to the program. I'm really happy to see you folks, and you've got so much to cover and say, and we got so little time. Cory, why don't you start with the mission of the organization and some of your goals?
So, of course, as a prevention coalition, our main mission is, of course, to reduce substance use of primarily youth, but we really want to grow that and create a ripple effect onto the adult population in Portsmouth as well. So we're looking at substance use reduction and hopefully long-term elimination for the town of Portsmouth primarily. Though our work does expand just beyond our borders because of the region that we have a great relationship with. As far as goals though, I just started my position in July, so not just started, but I started in July as a part-time coordinator, and it's been about 8 months now, and within the coalition, our primary goal is to continuously engage students, youth in Portsmouth, and adult parents in Portsmouth to really get them involved in the conversation of prevention from the ground up and the top down. That's how I always like to approach it, because if we're offering program to a youth, we want to make sure their parents have an equal amount of information to support any questions that that youth may have. On a personal note, one of my personal goals as the leader of the coalition is to really expand our diversity and the different sectors that may be represented on our board. We have a lot of great resources that have been tapped a few years ago, and now they're ready to tap again. And we're willing to build those relationships and really get the ball moving on prevention and get everyone involved.
Sounds good. Maryanne, you, as the chief honcho, can you give us a thumbnail of the history of this organization? I understand that it started back in 1988. I know you were just a babe at that time, but I mean, can you give us just an idea of how it's developed over the years?
Sure. You're right. It was formed in 1988. It was mandated by the state that every community in Rhode Island have a substance abuse task force. We changed our name from Portsmouth Substance Abuse Task Force to Portsmouth Prevention Coalition a while back to fit more with the terminology, to be more current. We operated under BHDDH for years, which is Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities and Hospitals. Okay, you pass. I know, it's a hard one, I have to memorize it. And in 2017, the state mandated that we we regionalize. So we submitted a proposal, and we now have Newport County Prevention Coalition, which is the region that we all work. We have Little Compton, Tiverton, Portsmouth, Middletown, and Newport work together, and it's been a really a huge benefit to our community to work with the region, and we have additional funding that's come in through the region. So yeah,
resources in general.
Yeah, I can sense in just your talking the development is going along, and the challenges and the problems faced have changed a lot since '88.
Oh, they definitely have.
Now there's a lot of work done in the matter of research. Cory, why don't you sort of thumbnail us through what have you found out?
Yeah, so one of the historic points of this coalition is that the past coordinator worked through an environment of denial within Portsmouth of getting people to understand that there actually is a substance use issue. Within that work, it began to generate survey data and needs assessments that over the years helped us apply for funding. That's why we were able to be awarded the DFC grant. And now moving forward, it's a normal practice to continuously generate these needs assessment data to understand the environment that we're working in as prevention workers. So The data that I'm going to present is from the 2018 Rhode Island Student Survey, and just a few bullet points on it that are really important and kind of summarize the environment we're working in. Is that there was a 30-day use reduction rate between the 9th and 10th graders. Now, it's important to note that these are not the same 9th and 10th graders year after year. It's a different population.
Yep.
So we can certainly draw into question different life events that may have happened during those age ranges, different programs they may have been exposed to, and so on. We also see 30-day use rates for vaping being extraordinarily high across all grades, and higher than any other substance in most cases. There's a universal decrease for students' perception of risk or harm, which is never good. This is data that we want to be high because it's their perception of risk. We assume and understand that if a student's perception of a risky substance is high, they're less likely to experiment with it. There are also drastic decreases in perception of parental disapproval, which draws into question how many parents are out there choosing to not have a conversation around substance use and really understand allowing their student to understand the expectations that they may hold. The most important thing, though, that our data draws, though, is the majority of students in Portsmouth are not using substances. We have a high amount of students that are not using substances, and we want to make sure to carry that positive message throughout all of our presentations, because a lot of times prevention work can be bogged down with an overlay of just negativity, because it is disheartening to hear that a student so young would be using a substance. So it's important that we underscore how many students in Portsmouth are choosing to not use and are choosing to live life as their authentic self, substance-free.
Okay, so that's the, it's right. I saw in your handouts the word denier somewhat, and at first I said, I'm going to ask them what that means, although I think I know the answer. But you must be facing something similar to the climate change.
Oh, yes.
That you know, some people are ready to move their houses away from the water, and others say, I'll do it in 100 years. And so you folks have to say, you've got a problem, and you've got people saying, what problem? So you've got quite a big net to cast out there to bring people on board. Though your target seems to be adolescents, how do parents and teachers get involved, Cory, with your program?
So I think a note that you just mentioned about how wide of a gamut we're working with on both ends of the spectrum, especially in a community that has a medical dispensary, we understand that there is a higher level of marijuana within this community, and we kind of have to be sensitive to that to draw them and make them a part of our conversation. So many parents and teachers are already part of our work, but from a theoretical standpoint, I like to think of every single solitary moment a youth interacts with an adult, whether it's within a school or buying a coffee at a coffee shop. There's an opportunity for that youth to really understand their community and really gain a sense of community through those interactions. On a less theoretical note, though, teachers have stake in our work because we support them. We support the work they do to inspire students to want to reach their true potential. We allow them to come to us and ask for support if needed on resources, any information, of course to funnel a student to a specific service if they see any type of, if they're notified that that student could possibly be in harm's way. The community has stake in our work because we want to inspire community interactions as much as possible. Having these conversations is really, really, really important, and a conversation can truly go a long way. And of course, parents have stake in our work because they live an extremely busy life. So to try to keep up with all of the trends on substance use, how students are using, I mean, vaping threw a huge wrench into that whole picture. So it's important that they understand us as not only an entity within their town, but as a resource that can be contacted and reached. I mean, we hold monthly meetings the second Wednesday of every month at the Brown House in Portsmouth. That's also where our office is located, down Gardner 70 Fields. They start at 8:30 in the morning. You can also reach me by phone or email. We're on Facebook. Our handle is @Ports Prevention. And the research just shows that parents have the biggest influence on curbing substance use amongst youth. So we want to make sure that all of those avenues for communication are wide open, whether it's parents, teachers, youth, administrators, or people who may work for the town, outside of the town, whoever it may be.
Yeah, as I thought about this and as I listened to you, though one of the targets you're dealing with is the youth, they're in school only 6 hours a day, and then they have summers and they have vacations and they have evenings, and so you've got to get the community involved, if not in directly helping, at least being identify problems in a given youngster. I assume police is in this package too, and that dispensary comment caught my attention. All right, Carrie, you've been waiting very patiently for your day in the sun.
What I was about to add in on that is really educating kids so they can help each other. So it's having high schoolers go present to middle schoolers or elementary schools about about the dangers of, you know, alcohol use, drug use, vaping.
Yeah, so that's a good component.
So they need to understand it too, to then relay the information. So it's kind of like, you know, the adults need to understand it to help the high schoolers understand it to then relay. Because kids, quite honestly, they learn from each other. So you want the message.
Sometimes they
you
learn
want
the
that
wrong
message.
thing.
Exactly. Well, and sometimes they question each other. My kids do it.
Yeah.
They question each other all the time. And they're not afraid to, you know, ask those questions or say, why are they doing that? Or, you know, so-and-so's doing this. I'm like, oh, interesting.
That peer pressure thing works both ways.
Sometimes
it's a resource and it's an advantage.
So this would be positive peer pressure.
They're hanging around with a bad crowd, you know, it works the other way. So you got to bring me up to date. As you can tell by my hairline, I'm a little past vaping. In my day, we didn't vape.
Yes.
We danced wildly. But what is this thing all about, Cara?
Well,
for the benefit of audience that never heard the term.
Well, vaping, I mean, the first time we actually have, you know, data for Portsmouth about vaping. So it's not just one specific device, it's or substance or even action. It's really kind of a blanket term for inhaling through an e-cigarette device. So this is a chamber pod, it's battery packed, it's a heating coil, and it heats up a liquid. So what they breathe out and what you see and what all the kids are seeing on YouTube and everything is like the smoke or the vapor or whatever you want to call it. It's actually aerosols. So what the problem is the threat to, you know, prevention per se is the switching of these cartridges. You can literally take the pod and switch it between devices, right? So it's
Couldn't they make it easy for you?
So it's the content of what's in there, and secondly, we don't know what's in there. Nobody knows what's in there. So they're obviously not listing the ingredients on there because they don't want to, because they don't want you to know what's in there. You know,
you're referring to the
meaning the companies.
The companies
that are selling the products. So so it's interesting how available it is to kids. You can buy it on the internet. You can get it from your older siblings. There's really no regulation on the age group. And you know, these websites aren't asking ages. So that's
kind of alarming.
Thing.
You telling me
so check
kids
your
have
Amazon
to be over,
account.
Or 21 to drink. They have to be over 16 to smoke. In fact, some of them it's later. And this vaping thing is just...
Yeah, at this point.
Hey, I know a guy between third and fourth period, and we changed pods. Oh my God.
Well, legally.
Yes, and to expand on what Cara said, it's really important to focus on how students are getting that. And we're in the process of really developing focus group questions to generate that information.
Oh, yeah.
But just through our interactions with the schools, which have been very frequent, there are various ways that they're getting them. Some of them are getting them from their older siblings who have a friend, and that, you know, like they can get them through that way. But Cara mentioned Amazon, and we get our students and our youth someone receives Amazon gift cards for their birthday or Christmas, they can go online on Amazon and buy these products, which are unregulated. And through that process, you check out as a guest and you're not actually identified as having the correct age. So
You just have to check the box.
yeah, you just have to check the box and use an email. So at the end of the day, even if this is just a like a town issue where there was one store that was selling underage, that's really easy to address.
That's right.
This isn't that whatsoever.
No, it isn't.
This is a widespread issue that it has really embedded itself in social media. I mean, you can go on Instagram and watch videos of these youth who are backed by e-cigarette companies very blatantly, and they're sent devices, they're sent e-liquids, and they market them online because they're social media influencers. There's been stories that these people doing this online are 16 years old, 17 years old, under the age of 18, and their primary contact with the company, the vaping company, is non-existent. So it's a very interesting dynamic that we're seeing.
Can't appreciate how severe that is. Not only that it's available, but what's in there is not known. And that a black marketer or a person who wants to supplement his income could make his own little pod.
And that's what we're seeing.
They're starting to make their own.
We're seeing...
They're starting to make their own?
Yeah.
Well,
so
because it would be effectively cheaper.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure.
And we're starting to see...
the controls.
Yes.
Yeah.
The control is not there.
Really, they're not there.
And how they are changing the cartridges and refilling the chamber within these e-cigarette devices, they can do it with marijuana. They can with THC and CBD. So at the end,
You sure you want to stay with this group? I think climbing Everest would be a little easier.
yeah.
And
So
don't forget, these devices look like inhalers. They look like pens. They look like the USB thumb drives. They look like a highlighter, like those little round fat ones.
One of the things that fascinates me as I read and listen is they can be vaping in third period English class and nobody knows. How does it, no smoke rises?
They have clothes that you can buy that have vape. You could vape in your scarf.
no, the
Nobody would
drawstrings
know.
on a hood.
Yeah.
So you can inside of it you plug in a cartridge, like your Juul or your battery, whatever it may be, and you can vape through the hoodies. Now, I haven't seen that personally in Portsmouth, but just the fact that type of device is out there and available shows how discreet this can be.
That sounds like a monumental challenge to be able to make a difference. First of all, ID it and then deal with it and then come up with some actions that will reduce or prevent it. Wow, Cory, you have anything to add? You're a front liner. You're on the you're with the coordinator of the school program.
Yeah, I think that's it.
You know, I just wanted to add the vape. So you asked about the vape. You know, there's no smoke. So there is, but it dissipates very quickly. And the other thing that I forgot to mention was we were awarded the. Cory mentioned the DFC grant, and I didn't explain it when I started. The DFC grant is the Drug-Free Community Grant, and we were awarded that this past year. It's $125,000 a year for 5 years with a carry-on for another 5 years. So, you know, we talk about all these problems, but we have tremendous new resources available that we haven't in the past. So I wanted to make sure we are so grateful for that new resource that's available.
Which then it's opened up to other resources that we can tap into.
Oh yeah, typically, well, I go back to when I was involved with it, and you got some measly grant from the state, and then the second year they said, well, we're a little short, we're going to cut it 50%. And so if you had hired a student assistance counselor, whatever, they became part-time.
Oh, of course.
So tell us about this conference. Cory and Cara went to the conference.
So I'll give you a quick run through because it kind of attaches with that vaping conversation too, and it links the DFC conversation as well, because we do have these funds now, and we have new capacity within our coalition in and of itself. We have new players at our table. So we're able to be creative in how we approach these, and we're able to be creative in problem solving, and that's something that I love to see within the public sector work. But our takeaways from the leadership conference, one of them in particular was how quickly these vaping companies are changing the recipes within the e-liquids. So they change them, first of all, they're not regulated. So they're actually creating recipes. So when they are regulated and certain chemicals in them are regulated against, they can switch them and continuously basically be in line to make money. But on the other hand, this is not something new. We saw this with synthetic cannabis.
God bless America.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And again, with the creativity, when we were there, we saw programs of anything from just speakers who have very charismatic approaches to how they're going to talk to youth, all the way to these huge blow-up organs that were probably 2 of me tall, and it was a big brain, and you could walk through it.
See what part of the brain is affected.
Yeah. Blow up organs. What are you talking about?
They're called medical inflatables. Yeah. Is actually what it's called.
A medical inflatable.
So you could actually walk right through the brain.
Exceeded my confidence here.
And you could see what, first of all, how the brain works, and then say you were using a substance, how each the brain, part of the brain is affected. And so you have this massive visual inflatable brain. And then you can see which part of it's a very powerful visual learning piece that was developed.
Well, I used to be involved with teaching driver safety for adults, and the question of the adolescent and brain development, and the reason they have problems with driving sometimes is that the judgment thing. So these
It's the exact same thing.
Same thing.
Same.
So there's, and you, further than like single incidents, that could have some lasting development.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I'd like you to deal with is the business of marijuana. In my time, God, that sounds ancient. Marijuana was the thing, everybody knew how to get it and was high on it, and all the programs and the adults were, don't do it, it'll lead. And then our state turns around and they have medical marijuana, now we have recreational marijuana, and so your job becomes, you're doing it, why can't I,
It's definitely a great mystery of how to put all these puzzle pieces together, but it's first important to note that marijuana recreationally has not been approved by the state of Rhode Island yet. Yes, it is in motion, and yes, it is a part of a larger conversation, but as far as this timeline goes, it's still kind of weary as to when it's going to fully land, and land in a way that everyone's going to receive the message correctly. The policies, though, that came along with having decriminalized marijuana and medical dispensaries that accept out-of-state licenses, and just a lack of regulatory nature around growers and caretakers, that created a bit of a vague interest in how to interact and engage people who may be smoking marijuana. Again, back to that wide gamut of people in Portsmouth. You have people who are genuinely medical marijuana recipients. You have people who are totally against it. So getting all of those people's opinions generated together.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes, and in past needs assessments, there's even been focus groups with public safety, whether it's police officers, firemen, school resource officers and stuff. And they've voiced that it does make their job a bit harder because they need to look at where and how to focus their resources most effectively. And having this wide range of gray area around marijuana policy and enforcement is difficult. But the good thing is we know recreational marijuana will never be legal for youth to use. And right now, marijuana is definitely not legal for recreational use. So it is decriminalized, but we want to make sure that we continuously underscore that for the time being, it is illegal recreationally, and it will never be legal for the youth to use marijuana recreationally.
Let's hope.
Yeah. It
looks like the lid is coming off there. So how, I was going to say, you had, how can parents or anybody in the community sort of detect whether youth is on something? Mm-hmm. I saw in the paper the other day that the police are going to have a terrible time stopping somebody driving who's had some vaping or whatever, yeah, and arrest them, and how to test for it. How can the normal people find out if a youth is I don't know, misbehaving or behaving strangely and might be vaping or worse still, marijuana or heavier drugs? Are there any guidelines to help us poor folks?
I will say the guidelines for marijuana stand true probably from way back when. It's the red eyes, the increased thirst or hunger, hiding in your room when you get home, smelling like weed when you walk in the house, or maybe smelling like too much cologne to cover it up. So in general though, it's those social factors and the protective factors that we want to work to bolster that are important to take note of, like a change in interest in your student or your son or daughter, a personality change, a change in their closest group of friends. You know, those signify changes in their life that you want to engage with, and you should question and just to figure out what's going on in their mind, because the more you set yourself up to engage in those conversations, the less uncomfortable you're going to feel with them. So at the end of the day, if we can empower parents and offer them resources and guidelines and trainings and really build their toolbox of skills to begin to engage with their youth on substance use, it's going to create a better community.
Yeah, and the challenge is just, I'm trying to relive this thing in terms of it. You know, my experience with adolescents is that there are enough changes from grade 7 to whatever. Yeah. There are enough changes if you don't take anything.
Absolutely.
And then all of these additional things create a horrible situation.
There needs to be a level of vigilance around it too, and compassion, because you don't want to be
no,
over-aggressive, you know?
Well, and that's that we don't want kids to be self-medicating. So if there's a mental health issue, if there's a school issue, if there's a friend issue, if there's a home issue, you know, they tend to, quite honestly, move to substances to try to get away from it all.
Oh.
And whatever substance they, you know,
clearly
get their hands on.
So. Well, I see our time is coming to an end. That brings a smile to Kara's face. What kind of things do you want to leave the audience with in terms of contact? When do you meet? Can they come? How do they reach you? Is there a phone number? Is there a website?
So, again, one of my personal missions, being the leader of this coalition, is to really offer everyone a seat at my table. And my coalition meets the second Wednesday of every month at 8:30 at the Brown House down Gardner 70 Fields in Portsmouth. That's also where Kara and I's office currently is. And the email to reach us at is portsmouth@riprevention.org. And again, follow us on Facebook at Ports Prevention, and we are consistently available.
That being said, we're going to end this thing, and good luck to you. What a challenge. I'm glad you have youth and vigor and creativity.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week in Portsmouth. We'll see you next time.